Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick here, and I've been teasing this for a little while now, and I'm happy to be virtually joined by Cody Leach, the man himself. Cody, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Beginning of a week. April was murder, but May has been a little more relaxed so far, so I can't complain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what part of the country you live in, but we're getting just terrible. Like it's just rain and 80 degrees, and then 60 degrees and rain and 80 degrees, and so right now we're at 60 and rain. So pretty sick over here in Ohio. I'm
Oh
digging
yeah,
it.
I grew up in Ohio, so that's funny. I'm in Georgia at the moment, and we get that bipolar weather too, right before summertime, and then it's just blistering heat for 4 months straight,
Yeah.
where it's 95, and then it's 70, and then it's
Yep.
piss and rain, and then it's just miserably hot and dry, and
Yes.
every day is different.
Yeah. Yeah. You what part of Ohio did you grow up in?
I grew up in Toledo. I lived there till I was 14.
Okay. So northern Ohio. That's northern or is that southern? I think it's northern.
Northwest, it's right
Yeah.
on the Michigan line.
Yep. Yeah. I am all the way I'm southern Ohio, Dayton. Grew up in Cincinnati though, and
Okay.
then moved to Dayton like 45 years ago. 40 45 minutes is what I was going to say.
I was gonna
It
say,
was a
you look
yeah, yeah.
fantastic for your
I
age.
know, I know. No, yeah, I moved here 4 or 5 years ago,
Mhm.
and, not a huge fan. I'm just not a fan of the state anymore. I
Yeah.
just haven't been anyway. The weather is the main reason for that, but whatever. You guys aren't here to listen to us talk about the weather and talk about Ohio.
Well, really quick before we tangent off of that, I understand what you're talking about because I grew up thinking that Ohio was the shit, and then we moved to Georgia, and the main thing that took forever for me to get used to was everything was close by in Ohio. And then we get
Mhm.
down here to the country and everything's 30, 40 minutes away, which seemed like an eternity to me as a teenager. And so for
Yeah.
years I was like, as soon as I'm of age, I'm going back. Fuck this place. And then I went back to Ohio when I was 24 for the very first time since I was 14. And it was like when the Penguins got off the boat in Madagascar. It was like, well, this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it does. I love going on vacation because and my mom lives in Florida now, so
Mhm,
I don't necessarily love going to Florida anymore because I've been
mhm.
there so many times and I just feel like it's where everyone goes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it is always nice to get away from here, always.
Mhm,
And then when you come back, you realize, like, dude, every other place is better. People talk shit about California all the time, and I've only been one time, but I have to tell you, and maybe it's just because I was like, oh, this is different compared to this. I didn't want to leave. Like I was like, this is awesome. San Diego, one of my favorite places I've ever been. I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go back. Now, LA, yeah, LA kind of sucks. Been there too. But San Diego's great. I love San Diego. Have you ever been to San Diego?
I have never been west of Texas.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna go to California at any point, I recommend staying in somewhere in Northern California or San Diego. If you want to stop by LA, everybody always does just to see Sunset Boulevard and all that. Don't stay long because it is
Mhm.
exactly how you hear it is. It's
Yeah.
just overcrowded and dirty and, whatever. So
Lovely.
yes. All right. So right off the top here, Cody. To you guys listening, it's been like a year and a half since Christian and I had Cody on the podcast with us, and I don't think I've ever told Cody this, so I'll just tell him this right now. Christian and I, leading up to that interview we did with you, we were like, I was actually the bigger proponent for bringing you on because Christian he doesn't really watch a lot of YouTube anyway, and I was like, dude,
Mhm.
I've been watching Cody for years. He's like, yeah, I know he has like a propensity to rile people up. I'm like, yeah, he does. Like he's don't know what it is, but like I've watched a lot of your videos over the years where like I see people sometimes they really their feathers get ruffled with you, and after it was done, and after we were done talking to you, me and Christian were like, dude, he's the nicest guy, like so
Mhm.
down to earth, like so awesome. But like, I was a little intimidated, I'll be honest, because I was like, is he going to say some shit to try to piss me off because I'm a Halloween fan or anything like that? But no, so I just wanted to say I never really followed up with you about that, but we were both really, really happy with it. And really, Christian since then has really grown in fondness for you. He's
Mhm.
like, oh, yeah, Cody, he's a great guy, So anytime you want to come back on, we'd love to have you on.
I
Christian's
greatly
channel has,
appreciate it, dude. I'd be
yeah,
anytime. Just let me know. But yeah, I appreciate it very much. That's always the weird thing because I'm very self aware and I know I'm a really nice guy. I only mistreat people that mistreat me. For
Mhm.
some reason, people that don't know me or get the wrong impression, I have this very opposite like allure about me, like I'm an asshole. And it's weird to navigate sometimes where I'm
Yeah.
like, everybody that knows me would think that's crazy. Like it's just funny.
No, I mean, I get it. I'm the bad guy of the two of us on the podcast. Not in the sense that
Yeah.
like I'm a dick, but like people like Christian's the lovable one, and I'm the
Yeah.
one that like everybody's like they like to shit on me for fun, but whatever.
I think it comes from being confident in your opinion. So, like you're very like, this is how I feel, and I'm strong with this. And
Yeah.
some people get intimidated by that. They feel like it's an attacking pose, and it's like it's not. I'm just there's conviction in what I believe.
Yeah, no, guys, funny story there, sidebar. Cody followed me on Twitter in October of 2022. And I remember because it was right after Ends came out, I posted my Halloween ranking and Cody saw it. I guess it showed up in the algorithm for him. And he said something to the effect of like, geez, like, holy crap, like that's a weird ranking, but like
Yeah.
respect your opinion. And I was like, hey man, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. I'll say
Mhm.
something and be like, this is how I feel. And people are like,
Mhm.
you're wrong. And I'm like, I'm not, but cool. Like, and we're going to get into some controversial topics here that I'm really excited to talk to you about because some of them Christian could care less about. And some of
Mhm.
these I know you're really passionate about. First thing,
Awesome.
right off the top here, we're just going to get into it. I know he's your guy. I didn't watch the video because I am not finished with the third season, but I saw
Oh,
your
here we go.
thumbnail. I
Yep.
saw your thumbnail, and you and I have had very similar experiences with this TV series.
Mhm.
Season one, I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's not terrible. Like I'm invested enough. Season two had some high points, but I was like, holy shit, what is this? This is really jumping the shark here. And I've heard season three, a lot of people say, oh, it really reeled it back in and it was really good. And then you, a Chucky guy, I see your thumbnail and you're like, it doesn't look like you were all that impressed. So, kind of overall thoughts on where Chucky stands right now after season three. Are you done with this TV series?
I'm done covering it. I
Okay.
don't know if I'm done watching it. I think curiosity is always going to get the best of me, at least maybe for one more season or part of a season. Season three was better than season two. They did reel it in a bit, but for me, it was more of a happy medium between season one and season two. I was pleasantly surprised with the first season. I was a naysayer. I was like, why is Chucky going to TV? This feels desperate. What kind of story are we going to tell over 8 to 10 episodes? The last thing Don Mancini did was Cult, which I was not a big fan of. So I was just expecting the worst. And there was things about the first season I didn't love, but I did like it overall. Season two, same as you, like a couple of moments that I like, but overall, to me, that season is Seed of Chucky 2.0. And I'm
Yep.
not a fan of that movie. I'm not a fan of that direction of this series. I'm not a fan of that tone. And so it was just 8 episodes of me covering it week to week, going, okay, let's say it again, what I don't like. And it just was draining. It's like, dude, I love Chucky. I'm such a massive fan of this franchise, and it's draining for 8 weeks straight to come on here and just bitch. And
Mhm.
so I wasn't going to cover season three at all. And my little compromise, because everybody was asking me when the premiere came out, like, when's your review? As I just did little 60-second short reactions to every video, every episode, and then I would just cover the whole season with a season review, what I did. And for me, it just feels like Chucky's not for me anymore. It feels like those of us that really hold strong to the first three films, maybe the first four films, there you go.
Yeah.
But those of us that are big fans of what I'll call classic Chucky, you get sprinkles of that here and there. But everything since Don Mancini has taken over 100% creative control, Seed of Chucky onward, he likes to go in all these bananas directions, with the exception of Curse of Chucky. I genuinely like that movie.
Mhm.
And I think that one was intentionally grounded ish and a little bit more old school Chucky. And that's why so many people that are fans like me of the old stuff liked it. But everything else that he's done has been, almost like he wakes up that day with a new crazy idea and just runs with it. And from season two onward, it just feels like there's no rules anymore. There's no parameters. There's no, the Dumbala rules that we've grown to be accustomed to since the 80s are just whatever. You can pick up
Yeah.
a for dummies book and do whatever you want. And just it continues to do that. Like season three actually introduces ghosts.
No, it does.
And while it does, I swear to God, there are ghosts in the White
Oh,
House. There's a paranormal side of things that goes the last half of that season. And while some people will argue and not have a terrible point, like it's always been supernatural. There's voodoo and there's souls transferring. Like, is ghosts and supernatural really that big of a leap? For some people, perhaps not. And if I didn't have season 2 of Chucky and Cult of Chucky and Seed of Chucky in the past, then maybe I could have onboarded to that a little easier. For me, that stuff is just, it's too out there. It's like this was never introduced, and now suddenly, just on a dime, there's ghosts. And you're just supposed to accept it and move on. And there's some people that genuinely love the new Chucky, where they're like, hey, I never cared for the old movies, but this shit is so bananas and batshit that I just love it. It's crazy every week. I never know what to expect. I love it. Or you have the opposite, like me, where it's like Chucky's supposed to be this thing. There's rules. There's things that he's not supposed to be able to do. There's things he's supposed to be able to do. And that's just gone now. And now every week I turn it on and the rules have changed. And this happens. And this episode, he's buff. This episode, he looks like Apocalypse Now. And it's just, it's not for me. And so I really don't know what like, if we were going to do a pie chart of Chucky fans, I don't know what size of the pie are people that love the new stuff versus people that don't. But it seems to be a pretty common through line to people that I talk to, that if you love the old stuff, you're not digging the new stuff. And if you love the new stuff, you were never really a fan of Chucky until about 4 years ago. And it seems they're fully bought in on that camp and don't seem to take into account too much the criticisms or the concerns of the old school fans. So I would say Godspeed. Hopefully they have enough fans to keep them afloat with the new stuff if that's what they're committing to. But if all of the stars and the crew of the show are going to spend the last 2.5 weeks retweeting hashtag renew Chucky, that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence that they have the amount of fans that they think they do with the new directions.
Uh, no, and I'm in the same camp as somebody that's pretty much our Chucky opinions, because I've watched a plethora of your Chucky videos, and they're pretty in alignment, I would say. Like, I love the original three. I love Bride as well. I loathe Seed. I love Curse. I was shocked, and I've always maintained that the only reason Curse is as good as it is because after the train wreck, that was Seed of Chucky, at least commercially and critically, regardless of how someone feels about it. It was basically for Don Mancini, this is put up or shut up time. If you don't deliver a movie that is halfway decent, like no one's going to buy a script from you anymore to make a Chucky movie. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then when he did that, oh, cool. You kind of steered it back on course. He was like, all right, let's get fucking stupid again. And then Cult of Chucky came out. And it's just, the guy has no impulse control. I've said it many times. Like you said, he wakes up one day, I want to do this now. And season 2 turned me off so much. That's why I still haven't watched season 3, because it was just like, I was someone that was a fan of the remake in the sense of like being a fan of the original 4 movies specifically. The fact that they changed it up so much, I was like, cool. If you're going to remake it or reboot it, at least make it wildly different. And there's a lot I didn't like about it, namely the doll design. But I was like, you know what? I could see more potential here than where we're going right now with Mancini, because right now we're on the small screen. You've got the crew and the actors and everything spending weeks talking about Renew Chucky. And like, if people love it, that's awesome. But I just worry that if Chucky gets stuck in that medium, he's never going to break out of it for a long time. And then it's just going to be like, I don't know about you, but there's something about the idea of, even though it was a remake, going to see a Child's Play movie in the theater was
Oh
really
yeah.
cool. Like, that's cool to me. I don't want these things relegated to the small screen like that, where they're not really taken seriously. I just feel like Chucky might be stuck there right now. I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Like it gave me a lot of concern whenever Curse was going direct to VOD. It was like, oh, this is the new direct to DVD. This is where Chucky's going to stay forever. And then, like you, I was like, damn, it's pretty fucking good. Cult, not so much. But then, yeah, when the remake was coming out, I was one of maybe 3 people vocalizing on the internet its support for it. Everybody else was like, fuck this, Team Mancini. But like you, didn't like the doll. A couple other things bothered me, but overall, it was solid as hell. I really enjoyed it. And I liked seeing Chucky on the big screen, because the only 2 movies that I saw in theaters were Bride and Seed. Very stark different experiences too.
Yeah.
And I know that he had released. There was a report maybe a month ago saying that Mancini is writing a movie that's supposed to be released alongside the show. I don't know if that means theatrical or direct to Hulu or whatever, Peacock, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like certain horror properties can survive very well with the TV adaptation. Like I loved Bates Motel, I loved Hannibal, but I don't think those shows gave me the impression at all that those properties will never be on the big screen again. I could see a Psycho movie or a Hannibal movie getting greenlit today, and part
I
of it's just
think
because
the professionalism behind those shows, that they were big budget, there was
Mhm.
big name actors in them. Like, yeah, it wasn't this rinky dink operation.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been some impressive things with their production. Like season 3, one thing I'll tell you, the gore was fucking fantastic that entire season. Like every episode had at least one little premiere kill, and regardless if I enjoyed what was going on story-wise or not, when they killed somebody, I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." But yeah, it feels TV. And if they're getting these new modern fans, that's cool, but I don't feel I can't see Chucky in the context that he is today with the tone and with the breaking the fourth wall and having like the crypt keeper element where he talks to the audience. I can't see that ever going back to the big screen and making sense. So I'm right there with you. Like whatever this movie is, first of all, it's an odd announcement for me to think I want this TV show to go strong and I want it to be renewed, but I'm also doing a movie. To me, that feels like a contingency plan.
Yes.
But yeah, regardless, it just I don't know. I love Chucky. He's always kind of felt like the redheaded stepchild, no pun intended. To me, he's the one that belongs on the Mount Rushmore with Freddie, Michael, and Jason. But as a hardcore fan, the direction that's gone the last number of years, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
I get,
Yeah.
I'll hold on to my old movies and my little scarred up doll and just relish in the past.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks. And this is it not in any way to be like misconstrued as like, oh, hashtag fuck Chucky. Like, no, I
Mm-mm.
mean, whatever. Like, but it's just, you kind of remember the glory days, I guess. This is when you start to really feel like the old man yelling at the cloud because you're like,
Absolutely.
oh, well, my Chucky was, yeah, well, I guess it's sad for us to have to accept that that's just not Chucky anymore. And at the same time, it's like Brad Dourif is up there. So like anything they can do to get him to come back to voice Chucky, it's cool
Yeah.
in that way. But at the same time, too, he's really showing his age in his voice work too. And it makes me sad almost. Like it really does. Cause like I'm like, that's Chucky, but there's just something different. There's just a lot that's different about it. And that's why I felt like the 2019 movie was probably the best way to move forward. Like, okay, it's almost like England with Nightmare. I know a lot of people want to see him come back one more time, but like if you do that, you're just satiating a fan base that wants to see him come back to the role that he lived for 30 years, only to just say, okay, did you love that? That was great, right? Well, he's done now. Like,
Yeah.
people, if you're going to cut the cord, you need to cut the cord. And it's hard. It sucks sometimes. But like, as much as you and I both have a lot of controversial opinions about the Blumhouse Halloween trilogy, I think the best decision they made was, hey, Castle, you're gonna do like one shot in the costume. Like James Drew Courtney's gonna be Michael Myers. Because when they heard Nick Castle is coming back, everyone's like, no way. And
Mhm.
I'm like, uh, what? He's like in his late 60s. Like, I don't know about
It's
that.
especially weird with Michael and Jason because it's like it's a dude in a mask. Like, is it really like I know there's certain nuances to the physical performance, but it's not the same as Brad Dourif's voice or
Mhm.
not, or Robert Englund's face and voice or not. It's just something else. So it's
Yeah,
always funny.
yeah. Well, and then just piggybacking off of that, I wanna hear your thoughts because I know if I'm not mistaken, one of your other first loves is A Nightmare on Elm Street. You've
Oh
always been a
yeah.
big Freddy guy, and,
Yes.
I am someone, as I'm sure you remember from just some of my social media posts at times, that I do feel like the remake gets unnecessary shit. I don't love the movie, but people act like that thing is like a cinematic train wreck, and I don't think that's the case. I think it's kinda soulless, and,
Mhm.
Rooney Mara is kinda terrible in it, but there's stuff I like about it. But regardless, here we are in this weird time where now Friday's in limbo, and Lord knows we'll get into that. And Halloween, we hear they're going to do a streaming series or whatever. I wish they'd take a longer break personally, but whatever.
Preach.
That's what they're going to do. So where are we at here with Nightmare? No noise, none. And I've checked with Brad Miska of Bloody Disgusting. I've been friends with Brad for almost 10 years, and I'll reach out to him every now and then, and I'll say, hey, can you run down this rumor? He'll come back to me and be like, total bullshit. And any
Mhm.
rumor we've heard about Nightmare over the last 2 years, he's come back and been like, total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not true at all. So is it crazy to you to think that like nothing is happening here at all? There's no movement whatsoever. And do you think it's simply because of England? Like they don't want to do it without him.
I think it's extremely strange. I mean, I felt this way back when Halloween 2018 exploded, and it was like, oh shit, are slashers back? And then since then, we've had what? Candyman's come back, Child's Play came back in two different formats. We've had Scream come back. Scream had two movies for Christ's sake,
Yeah.
and so it feels like, with the exception of Jason, it feels like everybody's shown up at the party, and they're like, where the fuck's Freddy at, dude? Like he's like 4 hours late.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's weird to me that there's not any chatter, not like a news announcement about, the Craven estate is looking at scripts or anything, or somebody trying to buy the rights. Like at most, all we hear is Blum wants it. Well, Blum wants everything. Blum wants the fucking Infinity Stones. And so to me, it's very strange. And I honestly don't know why. I don't know if it's because the estate is just very protective of it in lieu of Wes Craven's death. I don't know if it's because the remake was received so poorly. And like you, I don't like the movie, but to me, the most unfair judgment that gets hailed at it is that Haley did a bad job.
Yeah.
And I'm not on that team whatsoever. I think he did a great job for what he had to work with. And if he had something even better to work with, he could have been a fantastic Freddy.
And less
Uh,
CGI. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel like the online chatter giving people the presumption that not having Robert Englund was the issue with that film is absolutely false, but maybe they're running with that. And just like you said, Robert Englund being steadfast for what, 20 years at this point, saying I'm done, and still nobody taking him seriously. I mean, the guy is really old. I heard recently he might not even do con circuits anymore, and he's doing pictures sitting down. Like, you expect him to put on a physical performance in makeup that takes hours to apply and remove. There's no fucking way.
No, and
And
Heather's
all
not helping matters because Heather keeps coming out every 6 months going, guys, let's do it. Bring me back. Come on. And I'm sorry, that reeks of desperation to me personally. It really, every time I see that article,
mhm.
every 6 months, a new interview with her, I'm like, I get it, Heather. Not a lot going on, but Robert's
Yeah,
not coming back.
yeah, and I agree to a point. Actress or actor wanting big role with big paycheck is not really a news article to me. I mean, they post that stuff all the time. Brad Pitt wants to star in this. You mean he wants a paycheck? I get it. That'd be cool to
Yeah.
see. We'll see. But the thing with that idea, to me, the desperation of it is just like, I don't think Nightmare on Elm Street has to do the Halloween 2018 model, and I don't want it to. I don't want one more movie where Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp come back for one final confrontation. Like, to me, that's been done to death already. The whole requel thing is kind of played out. If we're going to do that, I think Nightmare on Elm Street has carte blanche where you could do like a Dream Warriors sequel, or go somewhere else in the point of the timeline and do something a little different. But as somebody who's a massive fan of Robert Englund and a massive fan of Heather Langenkamp, and regardless what I say, I'd be there day fucking one if they did another movie together.
Same.
To me, similar to how you were alluding earlier, it just doesn't make sense to do that at this point, because even if you do it, and let's say for argument's sake that it's great, all people are going to say is, what's next?
Yeah.
Is there more? You're going to have another one, right? Like, Freddy can't be dead. And then they got to say again, like, no, I said I was done for 20 years. I did one more. Now you want more? What the fuck? So
Hmm.
to me, I've always said they need to just take their time, get a great script, get a filmmaker who's passionate about Nightmare, which should not be that hard to find in the horror world, especially. I mean, I think every horror filmmaker could list that as an influence, or Wes Craven at least, and go find somebody who's at least somewhat underknown or not like an A-list actor that has the passion for the character and can do something different the way Robert Englund did in 1984 and literally disappear into the role. And I'm afraid what they're going to do if they do recast it is they're going to go for the biggest name they can find. Like, Kevin Bacon was getting thrown around a lot for a while there, and I love Kevin Bacon, but if you put Kevin Bacon in Freddy makeup, I'm going to see Kevin Bacon in Freddy makeup, not Freddy.
Yeah.
And if you find somebody that we don't really know, the way that Bill Skarsgård disappeared into Pennywise, then that's the best option as long as they have a good script and a good director behind them. So that I'm hoping that's why they're taking their time. But yeah, I mean, it feels odd. I'm afraid that this current trend that we're on, where the old school slashers and the old school properties with the new properties are all living and breathing pretty well, and everybody's excited about horror. I'm afraid that this really healthy era of horror is going to start to phase out by the time Nightmare joins the party, and then nobody's going to care.
Yeah, that has been my mindset this entire time, and that is why I have been so scared because I'm like, "You're missing the boat, Nightmare."
Hmm.
And Friday, you're missing it. We've seen this decade after decade. There are peaks and valleys, and it's just the way this goes, and soon enough, it's just bound to happen. We're gonna get into a mid-90s again, where nobody gives a shit about
Hmm.
these movies, and it's gonna take one that kinda switches the formula a little bit to really reinvigorate the interest in it, but there's going to be lulls there, and I don't understand, and I'm sure they have their reasons. I hope they have their reasons, because to sit on a property that is that lucrative, like even a remake that was panned by everyone, made over $100 million 14 years ago, like to just sit on it is just weird to me. And I've said this many times before, and I don't want to be disingenuous. So, guys, I have said if Heather and Robert came back, I'd watch it. Of course I would. As Cody just said, we're gluttons for punishment. Like it's just what you do. Like you're gonna go see it. But again, to the point you made as well, then what? You're just delaying the inevitable. And
Hmm.
if we're just delaying the inevitable, why even do it? Like, I don't know. And people have mentioned actors before to play Freddy, and it would have to be somebody younger because you'd really want this to be a long running series again. At least that would be the hope.
Yeah.
I don't even know where you start there. I really don't. But yeah, it's just sad. I mean, I just feel like, as somebody that's a Halloween fan that's almost burnt out on Halloween now, and I'm just kind of like, give it a couple years. Like, I don't want to see anything. I don't want to hear anything. Give me the other guys now. And
Yeah.
I'm not getting them. And I guess that just leads right into, do you think this Crystal Lake thing is even going to happen? I mean, like, truthfully.
I mean, to me, it felt weird to see the reactions of this when it was announced compared to the reactions whenever they delayed it or shelved it or whatever. Because when they announced I think there was a bidding war. If I'm not mistaken, you and I were very heavily involved whenever there was all these rumors like
Hmm.
Blumhouse and A24, and it was like everybody was
Hmm.
reporting A24 got it, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And
Hmm.
then that didn't happen. But or maybe it was somebody else. Regardless,
No, it was you
it
and
was
I.
Halloween. It
It
was
was you and
Halloween.
I with Halloween. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were both wrong.
There we go. I'm fucking up the
Yeah,
details. It was a different
yeah.
franchise, but, different strokes. Regardless, A24 gets Friday the 13th. It's like, that's interesting. We're gonna do a Crystal Lake TV series, and we're gonna do the origins. And it felt like everybody was like, "That's weird. That's what you're gonna do with this?" And then the more people sat with it, I guess they got used to the idea, and then when it finally said, "Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna do that or not," everybody was like, "This is bullshit. This is the only way to revive this franchise. You're destroying it." And I was like, "Where was that energy like a year ago?" Anyway, would I have been curious to see what they could have done, namely with Brian Fuller at the helm of it, who did Hannibal? Sure. I think one of the biggest things that Friday the 13th has lacked throughout its 12 films is like compelling story. That's the last priority with most Friday the 13th films. So if you're going to do something to try to switch that up, cool, let's try it. But it always felt weird to me. So having somebody come in and look at what they were doing and say, it kind of feels like doing a movie or doing a more traditional Friday the 13th thing is going to be what more people want. I don't think they're wrong. I mean, we're never going to know what that series could have been. Maybe that would have been the greatest Friday the 13th thing ever. Maybe that would have been exactly what the Friday the 13th franchise needs. But I feel like if you if you got off Twitter and walked around a mall and polled regular people and said, "Hey, we got two options for Friday the 13th, a TV series talking about his mother, or a, 20-30 million dollar movie that goes to theaters and is just Jason cutting people up for 90 minutes. Which one are you going to see?" They're going to pick the Jason one because that's what people expect. So I don't know. Like it was. I think they, if I'm not mistaken, right, they said that Brian Fuller's not doing it anymore, and they're doing like a creative reset, or they're trying to like kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what it's going to be. To me, that feels like it's probably not going to happen. It feels like they got cold feet, or maybe his ideas were a little too out there, which sometimes is great, but people that wear the suits and sign the checks don't like weird. They like safe. They like, analytics. So I think it's much more likely that we'll hear the announcement by the end of this year that a movie is coming.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think it's Victor Miller's company.
Hmm.
I know that they struck a deal with A24. So I guess my only thing is like, well, they've already signed a dotted line at least for some kind of agreement. They
Hmm.
they got to do something, right? Or A24 is just going to be out of that money. I would
Yeah.
assume. So I feel like A24 is going to do something, but I also just get the vibe that it's not gonna be this series, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they just go to theaters with a movie. I
Hmm.
really wouldn't, and I feel like if maybe A24 at first was trying to play the long game, "Hey, if we can build this into something and keep these rights for years and years and really just kinda reignite interest in Jason, then we can go theatrical after a couple years, make a ton of money." Maybe looking at it like right now, like we just said, the era that we're in, maybe it's like, let's just strike while the iron's hot. Let's just give him the hockey mask. I don't know, let's put some teenagers at a camp and just have them kill him. And I hope that's the case, but anytime anything with Friday the 13th gets mentioned, my mind just immediately goes to Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller. And I'm just convinced that as long as both of them are alive, we're not going to see anything. Like I'm just
It's very possible.
convinced because they're I just don't see them ever going, you know what, you're right. I'll give you a little bit here, you give me a little bit there. No, they fucking hate each other.
Hmm.
And I just don't see it ever being a thing. Now, they're both old. So it's eventually one of them's gonna die, and then I'm sure I'm just saying, and
I
Christian and
know.
I
I
have
know.
talked. Christian and I have talked about this, and it's just like at some point these rights are gonna be up. Someone's not gonna have a say in it anymore, and then maybe we finally get something. But by that point, will people care? You
Yeah.
know, I also worry if you go 20 years without one of these icons, when they finally come back, have they lost their staying power? I don't know if we've ever seen that. I mean, can you think of someone that was like iconic that went away for decades and then when they came back, people cared?
No, the most iconic ones are the ones that come back every 4 or 5 years at most. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I mean the big three, as they call it, have been the ones that have consistently come back for too many sequels and too many reboots.
Yeah. And you're running the risk right now of having an entire generation of people, young adults that have no clue who Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees are. They've been
Mhm.
reintroduced to Michael Myers, but
Mhm.
Freddy and Jason, they're like, I don't know who the hell that is. Why do I care? I don't know, man. It's just weird. It's weird. It's depressing. Didn't really mean for this to get off on that foot. So,
Yeah, it is strange. Like the lawsuit thing definitely complicates things, and I haven't dove into it to have like this massive knowledge of all the legal jargon of how it works. It seemed like it came to some kind of an agreement last year, but who knows what that means? There's appeals and all kinds of stuff. So very possible that what you said is right. That as long as there's still a battle to be fought between those two, that the Friday the 13th fans are going to be the collateral damage, not getting to see Jason ever. Um, but yeah, the thing with A24, I mean, they've built a name for themselves being kind of the independent, weird movie crowd where they have these very off the wall movies. They're kind of like Blumhouse with a little more artsy flair to it, where we've had a lot of different hits over the last number of years by A24, and they've slowly started to have a little bit more mainstream appeal. I felt like X was kind of like the one that launched that a little bit, and then we had
Mhm.
Talk to Me last year, and they've already said they're going to start to balance and try to have more mainstream stuff to fund a lot of the more experimental stuff. Civil War was a massive hit for them. So with that, between Talk to Me and Civil War, they very easily could have done what you said, where they looked at it and said, artistically, I like what you're doing here, Brian, but financially, I think we're going to rake in buttloads of cash if we just go to theaters and just have a classic Friday the 13th poster with the hockey mask, you know,
Mhm.
teenagers getting slaughtered and Just go back to basics and do it well. So I'd be up for that. Either way they go sounds interesting to me. I was a massive fan of the remake. I was pissed they never followed that up. So I'm not in line with most Friday the 13th fans as it is.
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing to me too is like at least with Nightmare, the reason that the remake didn't get followed up is because universally most people just fucking hated it.
Mhm.
So New Line was like, okay, well maybe we don't follow that one up. But I mean, also there is another layer there. They wanted to, and Rooney Mara was like, no, I'm not coming back as Nancy. So that which was hilarious. And then there was this whole behind the scenes thing. Apparently, when after she said I'm not coming back, and they were like, okay, well we can try to move forward without her. She fought them on it and was like, well, I signed a 2 picture deal, so you're going to pay me for my second picture. And they were like,
Uh,
not if you're not coming back. We're not. She eventually ended up settling with them. I remember a couple years ago, I was reading a whole write up about it, and I was like, this is hilarious that Rooney Mara. Rooney Mara was the biggest reason we didn't get a Nightmare on Elm Street 2, not the fact that everyone fucking hated the movie. I I know I'm in the minority, but like she was the reason. Crazy. But whatever there. It's so that makes sense. But then Friday was just like it was a big hit, financially as well. But I think as soon as that hit came out, that's when Sean and Victor were like, oh, there's a lot more money here than we thought. We're not going to give any leeway to either, neither party wanted to give an inch to the other
yeah.
one. And it's just like, okay, cool. So we'll just spend the next 25 years of your lives making no money off any future Friday the 13th properties because you don't want Sean and or Victor to get the same amount you do. Like, awesome. Great. Really great train of thought. I know, Cody, when I'm like 80 years old, if I'm lucky enough to have an IP that's super popular and I made it with somebody else, I know that I'm just going to want to sit on my hands and not make any more money with it personally because I can take that money with me when I die. Of course, it's just I don't know. It's so ass backwards, dude. I just don't get it.
Yeah,
But
I could tell you right now, I'd be the John Carpenter in the middle of all of it. I'd be like, I'm just gonna chill here, watch TV. I'll put my hand out, and a check appears.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
whatever the fuck you want.
and people gave Carpenter shit, and I'm like, it's funny how
I
that's
love
turned
his
now.
honesty.
Yeah, in recent years, he's like, you can do whatever you want with any of my properties. Just pay me, and you can put my name on there. I'm not gonna do shit. Well, the scores, he did the scores, and those were good. But yeah, so that's a little depressing update, guys, on a Friday Nightmare Chucky, where everything stands right now.
You get nothing, and you'll like it.
Yeah, pretty much. I want to ask you too, really quickly. What do you think about this? Look, Evil Dead, man. Okay. I love the franchise. Love the
Me too.
franchise. And I find the 2013 movie to be I, incredible. I
Yes.
absolutely love that movie. And I understand that Jane Levy, after that movie, she talked about how grueling of a shoot that was. And then going to do Don't Breathe was also grueling for her. And she was like, I'm done with horror movies. I'm not doing this shit anymore. Like, I'm going to do other stuff. I'm going to art house. I'm going to get nominated for stuff. And then I'd seen her showing up in more stuff. Well, then there was chatter behind the scenes that she was in talks to come back for the sequel to Rise. And then I followed that up with Brad from Bloody Disgusting, and he was like, "Yeah, we heard the same thing." And then she was posting stuff, a picture on her Instagram story of an Evil Dead shirt, and she was like, "It was just very like, I kind of see where this is going here." And then quiet because of the strikes. And then after the strikes, we get word that there's a spinoff in production, and there's another movie now in production, but it's not a sequel to Evil Dead Rise. And I guess my question is, what the fuck are we doing, Cody? I mean, seriously, why can't Evil Dead be linear at all? Why do we keep doing this jumping around shit? You introduce Mia. Everyone loves Mia. Rise comes out, and a lot of people really like Rise. We're just going to abandon everything that we introduced that does really well and do something new. I mean, where do you stand with Evil Dead?
I'm not as passionate about the Evil Dead stuff just because I'm a very casual fan of that franchise, but I like all of them. But for me, if they're doing isolated stories with the intention to eventually bring things together, that makes sense to me. But if they haven't said that, that's what leaves the lingering question marks. I love the 2013 film. That's one of my favorite horror films of all time and my favorite of the franchise. Evil Dead Rise, I liked quite a bit. It was a weird experience. I saw it in theaters. I liked it, didn't love it. And then after I reviewed it, I almost felt like I was too positive in my review after I sat on it. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't. I don't know if I love that one. And then I rewatched it a number of months ago outside. We have like a little outdoor projector and a big inflatable thing. We watched it outside, and something about watching it outside at night like made me love it again. So I do like that movie quite a bit. And it felt very much like it was setting itself up for Mia, and I forget the surviving character, the sister at the end of
Beth.
Rise. It felt like they were setting things up for like a team up at some point.
Mm,
And people have been asking for Jane Levy to come back since 2013. People just loved it, and she only got to be a badass for the last 15 minutes of that movie. So it's like, I want more. I want a whole movie of that.
yeah.
Um, but I do kind of like the way that they've set themselves up to where there's multiple Necronomicons. Like there's the three of them we saw in Army of Darkness, and we just see these little isolated stories. They've now branched off to where it doesn't have to be the cabin in the woods. Now it's a high rise in the city, and who knows what these other spinoffs are going to do. So I kind of like both ideas. I think that there's enough in the tank where they can do the Evil Dead template and just change enough about the aesthetic of it and the setting of it to do something really cool with it. But that's only going to go over for so long before it's like these are all the same, just in a different setting. So I think eventually they do need to have some kind of a team up or some kind of a different concept in mind, whether it includes Bruce Campbell or not. Then I can't imagine he wouldn't show up at some point, even for a scene.
Yep.
But I mean, if you do a good job at doing a couple spin-offs and really making Evil Dead this healthy property that's got a lot of really good critic appeal and fans are loving it, and then you announce we're gonna have Jane Levy, the chick from Rise, and Bruce Campbell team up for something, that shit would be nuts.
Oh yeah, and that's the crazy thing too is I liked what they said after Rise, namely Raimi and Campbell. They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna try to pump out a movie every 2 or 3 years now. We don't want this to sit on the shelf too long." That's the right mindset to have because I gotta tell you, even as a big fan of Evil Dead, it's definitely more niche. It's
Yeah.
not Michael Myers. So when this came out and it did like 150 million, I was like, holy shit. Like I did not expect that at all. I thought maybe you could come close to 100, but
Mhm.
like because I remember 2013 was a big deal and it was like it made like 97. It didn't
Yeah.
even break 100. So I was like there's no way. But it was huge and I just think that I don't want them to miss the boat on that either. I do think they've had this plan for a while though, because if you remember during the promotional tour for Rise, Jane Levy was on the promotional tour. It was her and the original, God, Ash's girlfriend from the first movie, that actress. They were sitting on the bench for the Evil Dead Rise poster. She was at the premiere and stuff. And I was like, why is Jane Levy showing up on this promo tour? This is kind of interesting.
Subliminal messaging.
Yeah, and then she drops these hints, and I just feel like, and it obviously the directors like Lee Cronin himself said like, oh yeah, all these stories exist in the same universe. Like all these are happening at different points in time in different places throughout the country, but like yes, they're all in the same universe. So it's just like okay, $150 million hit. Jane Levy seems like she finally wants to come back to horror. Let's do it. Like let's and for all we know, Cody, it could happen. I mean, the second Evil Dead movie they just announced like 2 weeks ago where they said, yo, another movie's coming. It's not the spinoff. We don't have any detail on it. Maybe that's the one. I mean, we
Mhm.
don't know. We just don't know anything about it yet. So yeah, I mean, we'll wait for that.
And
I
I'll tell
wanted
you
to
what'd
ask.
be a cool possibility. It's kind of it doesn't seem realistic in the age of today where they just like to promote everything about the movie and they want the whole plot out there before the movie comes out. But I imagine this scene of like, say it's a spinoff and we're halfway, two-thirds the way through the film, and the lead characters are cornered and there's deadites, and all of a sudden a chainsaw just comes through the door and cuts a deadite in half, and Mia comes in and nobody knew that she was in the movie, and then just fans freaking out. Like I wish we could get something like that. It's probably not realistic. She'd probably be on the poster and everything, but yeah, you got the director of Infested, which I don't know if you've seen yet, but was a
Yeah,
really
fuck
solid spider movie and
yeah, and I
very.
fucking hate spiders. I fucking hate them. But I watched it.
Oh
Ugh,
yeah,
ugh.
for like 2 days, you're like every little thing you
Yeah.
feel, but
Mhm.
the style of that movie very much you could see that guy doing an Evil Dead film. And then the one that was just announced is the guy that directed Last Stop in Yuma County, which I saw last year at Fantastic Fest, which was awesome. Doesn't immediately make me think Evil Dead, but it's a very tight, tense little bottle movie, and that in and of itself is Evil Dead. So I'd be curious to see that. So they're going after talent, and that's the number one thing to kind of set your foot forward for success. So I have faith in them. I hope that we have something cool in mind that's not just Evil Dead in a blank.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of those franchises, man, where they don't have a miss yet for me.
Yeah.
All of them, I like all of them. And so it's like, so far, you guys are batting 1,000 as long as you continue to bring in talent, have solid scripts. And I really think the thing that sells a lot of these movies, man, Evil Dead Rise would not have worked the way it did without Alyssa Sutherland
Hmm.
as the Deadite. She was incredible. I mean, you think about Deadites throughout the series, Henrietta, like, I think that sometimes makes these movies a lot of the time. So it's a very simple thing, but get these directors and really bang it out. I'm excited for it. I got to ask you about Infested, dude. As an arachnophobe, and I mean, probably the scariest movie I've ever seen is Arachnophobia.
Hmm.
It's just, I can't do it. I mean, I watch it, but I'm tense the whole time. It's one thing for me. What scares me is when it's real spiders or spiders that look real. So for 80% of Infested, I was genuinely like, I'm not cool with this. I'm not this. Fuck this. This is terrible in a good way. And then the end, when you got these really big spiders, like eight-legged freaks type shit, I'm like, well, that's not scary anymore.
Yeah,
But I gotta say, I don't usually go and watch foreign language films because I'm just annoyed by subtitles a lot of the time.
I get it.
But I liked Infested quite a bit. I thought it was tense. Godzilla minus one. I saw that in theaters. I loved that. So yeah, I think that director showed that he could definitely create some tension. I mean, that there's one scene. Your overall thoughts on Infested. I want to ask you, but the scene where someone is dying in a hallway and you're getting the reaction of the other characters, that shit to me was like really powerful. Like in the middle
Mhm.
of a movie that is disgusting, I was like, holy shit, like this hits deep. I mean, what did you think about the movie?
I dug it. I'm not arachnophobic quite, but I don't like spiders. Like, I'm just uncomfortable enough with them where, like, if I see one or if, like, I'll freak out. Like, I'm not calm, like, "Oh, let me go put you outside all calmly." Like, I'm not that dude at all. But yeah, to me, it was a really grounded, tense type of spider film. They used a really good mix of real spiders and then later on more CGI spiders. I think that they set up a number of really tense situations, like you have where the hallway lights are on a timer, and there's a hallway they have to get through, and it's just nothing but webs and spiders. And so it adds this nice ticking time element, plus the tenseness of just like any one of these spiders could drop on me at any moment. They get to the end of the hallway, and then another situation happens. So it's a really solid, intense movie if you're afraid of spiders, especially. And that's the way I sold it to everybody when I talked about it after I saw it at the Overlook Film Festival was like, if you're arachnophobic on any scale, this movie's going to fuck you up. And so I appreciated that about it a lot. I didn't love the characters so much. I kind of felt like I was always at arm's length with them, never really knew too much about them to invest myself in them beyond just not liking spiders and sympathizing with that. And like you, the third act lost me a bit when it got real like massive action heavy third act because not only is it just now we're getting eight-legged freaks territory and it's not as scary, but also there's the way that they kick off the third act is they have a character make a decision that just never made sense to me. You know, that they introduce it's kind of like wreck or quarantine where the authorities have quarantined people in this building and kind of left them to die. And so it creates this scenario where they want the protagonist to be able to have some kind of revenge against the authorities, but the matter in which they execute that and kick it off just kind of felt stupid. It's like, what the fuck did you think was going to happen when you did that?
Yeah.
Like, and so I can't get into too much detail without spoiling it, but to me that was like, yeah, you really kind of shoved a square peg into a round hole to make that work, didn't you? But I liked
Yeah.
it overall.
And on top of that, I will just say, I don't know how in the midst of all that insanity, our main characters are totally unscathed while
Yeah.
everyone else is dying. And I was just kind of like, yeah, this is jumping the shark a little bit. But
Hmm.
yeah, overall it is good. And guys, if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. But like Cody said, and I've said as well, if you're arachnophobic, at least 80% of that movie will freak you out because I don't know if they're common in Georgia, but I know that having lived in Ohio, you know what a wolf spider is. They're very common. And the spider at the beginning of this movie that starts it all just looks like a wolf spider, which
Mhm.
makes it that much scarier. And then when you find out that, oh, you got baby spiders busting out of people's heads and shit, I was just, what the fuck, man?
Mhm.
So, yeah, now I'm even more scared of spiders. It's pretty awesome. So I wanted to ask you too. Just I know that when we had you on the podcast, it was not long after you made the announcement. Hey, I'm going full time on YouTube. I'm done working. I know that you got to the point where you hated your job, and I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of us in America get to that point. But you had the stones to be like, I'm going to do something about it. Like I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go do my thing. How has it been, these last couple years being full time? Has it been as rewarding or as you thought, as stressful as you might have thought?
It's been a mix of both. It's been great. It's gone very well, knock on wood. So, that was my main worry was like, if I go and I dive all my time and energy into this, is it going to have a reward that matches that? So far, it has. And so that's been really good. I haven't burnt out or anything like that. That was the other concern. Is like, if I'm just doing movies and YouTube, how long before I just hate movies and YouTube?
Yep.
And haven't reached that point yet. I definitely got to take my breaks here and there, but all that's been going good. There are stressors about being a full-time YouTuber that I did anticipate and some that I did not. Health insurance has been one that I'm still kind of navigating. I've had health insurance, but you don't have access to near as good plans or and near as affordable plans when you're self-employed versus when you have a company paying for part of it. There's also the constant sporadicness of the ad revenue. And the first year I was full time, it freaked me the fuck out. Like I was doing really well during the Halloween season, and then January and February just took a nosedive. And I called my buddy Sean, who's been full time longer than me, and I was like, "Dude, what the fuck?" And he's like, It happens every year. It's okay.
Mhm.
Calm down. You're not doing anything wrong. Just bunker down until April. You'll be fine." And so that's always kind of weird to navigate and trying to figure out like is there certain content that I can make to circumvent that, or is it just the nature of the beast? And so that's something I'm still kind of navigating a bit, and just trying to manage how much mental space I spend online because that's taxing in and of itself too. Like you want to be out there, you want to promote things, you want to interact, and you want to dive more into that stuff. But there's also the bad side of it that you expose yourself to more, and that can get mentally taxing. So just trying to balance everything is something that I'm always kind of trying to figure out as I go along. But overall, it's been great. I'm much happier. It's freeing to not have the feeling that I used to have where I would go to bed depressed and wake up angry that I had to go to that place and then come home and just be so mentally and physically drained that there's no room for anything else. Family, YouTube, enjoyment of life in general. So yeah, I can't complain.
Well, I mean, that's good. I know you do a good job of over the years. You've been open about the fact that like you're a dad, you're married, like you have responsibilities in life that are outside of YouTube. And I gotta say, for somebody that has done this full time now for a while, speaking for about you, you do a really good job of also not seeming like you live on social media
Hmm.
because and I believe you don't. I mean, there will be times, just for an example, I messaged you last week to talk about this, and you got back to me the next day, and I that didn't bother me at all because I'm like, hey, it's probably good. Spend time with your kids, like spend time with your
Hmm.
wife. I don't do it full time, but even doing it part time, man, like there are times where you really do feel like, am I taking time away like from my friends, my family, like stuff like that? So I can only imagine how much more amplified that got when you became full time. But
Yeah.
to be able upload consistently and you seem to have a life outside of this. And I feel like that balance is really important, and it's probably much easier, honestly, because you don't have that day job that's making you like making everything else seem like a fucking chore.
Yeah.
And that's what that shit does, man.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the weird thing about having the YouTube career is that there's all the different pieces of what makes the YouTube job is these different things that you do at different times of the day, and so it's not like your traditional job where you punch in, You do A, B, and C back and forth like a robot until the whistle blows like Flintstones,
Mhm.
and then you get to leave. Like with with YouTube, there might be some days where I only spend 2 hours on the computer. I have a video that I already recorded, I edit it, I put it out. That's my work for the day. There's days where I might record 2 or 3 videos, and that's all I do. There might be a day where I don't do jack shit, but comments and follow up with sponsors and look up things for conventions and all those little things and piecemeal are all the job, but it doesn't feel like this constant drain, like I'm clocking in and clocking out of something. And it's also freeing that I have the freedom to do whenever I want. Like there's times where I'll do it during the day. There's times where I'll just kind of get bored and I'll go up in my studio and knock something out really quick. There's times where I'm really busy throughout the day doing stuff with the kids, getting dinner together. Or I got to go run errands or whatever. And then it's 11 o'clock at night. It's pitch black. Everybody's asleep. The house is quiet. Not a creature stirring, even a mouse. And I'm just like, let me knock out a couple of videos. And then I do work that frees me for the next 2 days. So it's always an interesting experience to be able to work ahead like that when I used to feel like I was always in this box where I would want to work ahead. I'd want to save myself trouble later on. And that just wasn't the way that the business worked. So having a way that the business works around that, it works for my personality quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's I know my buddy Christian. I'm sure you're listening to this, Christian. I'm going to call you out here because Cody is a full time YouTuber. So, like, I feel like you could use some of this information too, and any of you guys watching that might be doing this as a hobby or a career or want to. Christian has look. I don't know how the man does it. He has seen growth on his channel recently that's been awesome for him, and
Awesome.
no one is a bigger supporter of Christian than I am. So like good for him. But man, he'll run himself into the ground sometimes. He'll go in
Yeah.
his movie room, he'll be in there for 5 hours recording stuff and then editing it. And the other night, I tried to do something similar. I was like, let me try this. I recorded 4 videos, did some editing. I was in my room for like 3 hours or so. And this was after working that day too. By the time I sat down on my couch at like 10:30 at night, I was like, yeah, fuck that. And I texted Christian. I was like, "I don't know how you do it, man." And he was like, "Oh, I would not recommend it for anyone. Like it's brutal, but it's kind of what you have to do." And I guess I want to ask you for him and for anybody else that may be listening, were you at that point one time too when you were
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
"I have to work like this in order to make this a career?"
Yeah, I mean, it's there's things about it that I totally understand and I champion, and there's also things that I'll caution against. So, yes, when I was working a full-time job, whether it was the one that I was working, which was construction when I started my channel, or the avionics job, which was the one that just drove me, damn near to fucking hanging myself, and I was like, "I gotta do something else." So either of those jobs, I treated YouTube like it was a second job, like I was clocking out of one, clocking onto the other. And that's the mentality you absolutely have to have if you do want to take it somewhat serious. And most people don't have the time or the drive to do that. And it's totally fine. Like people, for the most part, are cool with YouTube being a hobby or being a creative outlet or something they have fun with. And then, it'll accidentally go viral and they'll get lucky and things will they'll work out for them. But if you're somebody that's your drive is like, I want to be full time or I want to have a channel that's this amount or whatever, you got to treat it like a job because it's so easy to every single day come home from work and just go, not feeling it today. And then before long, you're not feeling it this week. And then before long, you're not feeling it this month. And I've had those times where I've taken little stints off of YouTube, which seems crazy to me now, where I would go 3 weeks and not upload anything. Um, and so I respect that. And I do think that's the right attitude to have to a certain degree. The other part of it that I'll caution against, though, is that there's absolutely a thing about burnout. And whether it shows or not is kind of where the concern comes. Like you can lock yourself in your room, spend 5 hours recording and editing, and I can almost guarantee you the last 1 or 2 videos you recorded and the last 1 or 2 that you're editing are going to suffer because you're burnt out and you're tired and you're rushing through it and you're not spending as much mental time making it the best video it can be. And I had a little bit of that when I first went full time, where my mentality was I'm full time now. I'm not doing shit else but YouTube. If I don't put out at least a video today, I suck. There's no excuse. And so for months, I was 7 videos a week, at minimum 6. and I would feel disappointed on those weeks. And what I noticed was some of the videos weren't as good as they could be because every single day my mentality was got to get it out now and I got to start on tomorrow. And so it was just about quantity and not quality. And I can tell you, I've seen more growth. I've seen better views in my videos. I'm happier with my videos. And it could all be a coincidence, but I don't think it is since I've adopted the mentality of let's definitely do 3 videos a week. We'll shoot for 4 or 5 if there's a lot of things to talk about, but that's it. And I'm more relaxed about it, and I'm more comfortable and more willing to spend more time on each individual video because I'm not running into the next day, with my hitting the ground with the feet running. So that's the only thing I would caution Christian and others that take that with is just every once in a while, make sure you're not burning yourselves out. And sometimes it's just a matter of structuring it. Like you can record 2 or 3 videos one night and then spend the next couple of nights just editing and piecemeal. And you'd be surprised at how freeing just that is. Just being able to sit down and do one thing. Just talk to the camera and you're done, or sit down and edit a video and you're done. Doing one after the other, it's draining.
Yeah. And I do just want to say he really does have it down to a science. I give
Mhm.
him a ton of credit. I do feel bad for him sometimes. I do feel like he's really, really pushing himself, but I admire it at the same time because he and I are friends. We have been for years, and in the way he talks about it, like I want to be at that point eventually too. So it kind of drives me because he's like, dude, I'm about to, make enough to be able to afford this or that just off of YouTube. And I'm like, that's a really big deal. Like that's awesome. And so I never want to make it sound like he doesn't have a good life balance. He does. I just I'm sure he could use more sleep. And
Yeah.
after trying to do one time what he does weekly, I was just like, I don't know how people do this. So I mean, more power to you. And if it works for you and you're able to find the balance, like absolutely. But I do feel like the avoiding burnout and stuff. And I got to say too, he rebranded his channel. It was a year or so ago, to help with that because his name was Christian Hannah Horror, and he was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to talk about horror all the time. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
not the only thing I love. I love so many other things. So he rebranded it to Planet CHH. And he said, since he's done that, he's so much happier. And he's
Yep.
actually been talking to me like, you got to break out of some of the horror stuff. And I just want to ask you too, because I got his advice on it. I want your advice too. It's like I try sometimes, and the videos, they don't bring in subscribers, they don't get views, nobody gives a shit. And at the end of the day, whatever, this is a hobby of mine. Like
Mhm.
this isn't my full-time job. But it makes you feel bad as a content creator sometimes because you're like, wow, I'm passionate about this, but it seems like nobody wants to hear me talk about it. So I don't know. I mean, what's the best way to do that? To branch out without alienating the people that are already subscribed to you, that have been, that expect, hey, we expect this kind of content. You're not giving it to us.
I think it all comes down to balance, and I'm right there with Christian and you. Like, if I could only talk about horror when I turn the camera on, I would have already quit. I can't. I love horror, and I love certain franchises more than others, but, like, there's certain channels out there that just talk about one franchise, and that,
Mhm.
like, no, I can't fucking do it, I'm sorry.
No.
And so I very much have always had an attitude of, like the way I describe it is that my channel has a focus on horror, but I talk about everything. And I've maintained that even more since going full time, where I review all the new releases I'm interested in, regardless of the genre, and I'll do rankings and do different things and uh, on action or comedy or whatever. And the way that I've been able to find success with it is number one, you got to kind of play the long game. There's going to be times where you put something out and it bombs, and you just got to not let it bother you. That was for you. That's a video that was for you, not for the views, not for the ad revenue. And what I found is eventually when you do that enough, not only does it not bother you anymore, but the people that are there for that content starts to grow. So the people that love when you talk about like I very, very rarely talk about music on my channel, but whenever I do, I'll get a whole slew of comments like, dude, I love when you do this. Why don't you do it more? And it's for the same reason that you said. It's because when I talk about Nightmare on Elm Street, I get 50,000 views. And when I talk about Alice in Chains, I get 5,000 views. But that's one that was for me. It was fun. It was something that I had a good time with. It didn't feel like work. And then people that love that get a little bit of a taste of that. And so doing that over time, and having a, like say you have 100% horror right now, start doing 90-10 and 10% other things, and then eventually bump that up to 80-20. And the subscribers, if you are maintaining their entrance, will go with that. That was the issue I had when I started my channel, of just trying to find out what got views, what people wanted to hear, and what people wanted to see. Because I was doing like trailer reactions and things like that, and I'm like, why does this get 4,000 views, but if I do a review that I'm really passionate about, it's like 300?
Mhm.
And all I had to do was just not let it bother me, wane down on the trailer reactions, pump up the reviews, and suddenly that started to shift. I do a review and it's 3,000 views, and I talk about something I don't care about, and the subscribers would agree. And so that's part of it. And the other side of it is just always making sure that you do enough for your main base. So if I talk about an action movie, or like I've tried every month for like the past 6, 7 months, I try to do at least one video a month where I highlight like a hidden gem. And those videos never do extraordinary, but that's what I say with like, that video is for me. That was just for fun. That's the most fulfilling thing for me, is when I get a comment saying, I would have never heard of this movie before, but you reviewed it or you mentioned it and I checked it out and I fucking loved it. Like, to me,
Mhm.
that makes the whole month worth it. Just one of those comments. So you'll do one of those videos, but then you do a horror review, or you do a horror tier list or whatever. And I always try to maintain that balance. I do a little calendar every single month, and I'll start off and do all the new releases, and any supplementary videos I'm going to do off of that, like rankings or whatever. Then I'll figure out a couple of like oddball reviews I want to do, and then I'll put in a couple that are specifically horror. Like last month, I did a horror directors tier list, and I did a horror subgenres tier list. And I've always been able to maintain having really big hit videos that I really dive into the horror base, but then I'll supplement it with all the stuff that's not horror, and it's fulfilling for me, and the views and everything will reflect that over time. But it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah, no, and again, man, that's really cool. It is really cool to me. I've always, like I said, I admire you. I've watched you for years. And to see your channel when you broke 100,000, I know you've probably heard this before, but like people that are fans of yours, that kind of felt like a win for them too. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was like you're now like the shit in a way. And I felt the same way when We Watched a Movie did, because I've been watching them since they were young and I was a kid, and I feel the same way about Christian. He's so close to 25,000, but 10,000 of those have been in the last 2 years. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
really just it's just really cool to see. And I feel like in this game a lot of the time, never let it get lost that like we're all in it together, and
Mm-hmm.
like we should want to see each other succeed. And don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. We have competitive juices sometimes. We're not going to mention names and stuff, but over the years when you're on YouTube, you're like, how the fuck does this person have more than me? Like, but and we all do it, but
Mm-hmm.
or have done it at some point. But it's just cool to see other people get to that point, and it just kind of drives you. So, I mean, I'm not here to be like, oh, worship at the feet. Don't worry, I'm not trying to be too much of a kiss ass, but like, it seriously is really cool to see where you've gotten and where you're going. And obviously Christian, one of my closest friends, he's on the same path, and it'd be cool to be there one day myself. But I need advice from people like you guys. The advice you just gave me of, hey, um, you gotta kind of find what works for you and
Mm-hmm.
go with it. But at the same time, you need to not allow yourself to get burnt out, because Cody, I started my channel when I was a teenager. Just, hey, one day I'm gonna grab this camcorder and I'm just gonna show you guys all my Halloween DVDs. I didn't know shit about YouTube. I was just like, I just want to show people my Halloween DVDs. And that video got like 50,000 views. And then I didn't
Mm-hmm.
upload for like years. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. But when I came back 2.5, 3 years ago and actually started uploading regularly, oftentimes I'll find people be like, "Hey, where's the Halloween stuff? Like, yo, give us a Halloween video." And I'm like, I don't wanna hang myself. Like, it's not all I can talk about. There's other stuff I wanna talk about. I still There's this long running joke from a couple of my subscribers. They're still waiting for my Transformers retrospective because I love the Transformers movies unapologetically, and I've said it before. And they're like, "Just do it, just fucking do it." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I probably will." But all right, man. Yeah, good shit, good info. I do really quickly before we go. I made a post on my Patreon, and I wanted to ask the questions that I got. I have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So the first question says, "What horror movies have come out in the past 10 years do you think will stand the test of time and be classics?" So over the
Oh,
last
wow.
decade, can you think of any?
Um, over the last 10 years, so 2014, I mean, I feel like some of the more, big IP stuff is pretty easy answers. Like, I feel like there's gonna be a generation that loves Scream 5 and 6, and maybe if we eventually get 7, those are gonna be their Scream movies, Evil Dead Rise, things like that. I feel like the X trilogy, by the time all is said and done, is gonna be a really solid mainstay in horror. You're also gonna get some movies that are very big in the conversation now that I think are eventually just gonna be those cool little hidden gems that, like, horror aficionados tell you about, like Barbarian,
Mhm.
where back in the day, that would be, like, the VHS cover that's, like, in the back covered in dust. Like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And so that's a good one. Um, I feel like Abigail from this year is gonna be that. Maybe I'm just crazy, like, I seem to be the biggest fan of that movie on the internet right now, but, to me, that's got absolute horror mainstay written all over it. And then I'm gonna cross my fingers. I haven't seen it yet, but please let Alien Romulus be that. I'm really hoping it's gonna be that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That 1 minute trailer that was really just a teaser, it just struck the right tone for me. It was horror. I just got horror from it, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm in."
absolutely. And then kind of just rattling off a few. I think Get Out will be there. I think that is the Cabin in the Woods the last 10 years. It feels like it's
I
longer.
It was 13 or 14, I can't remember what
Okay,
year.
okay, gotcha.
So right around that, you were yeah,
A Quiet Place, I think, is gonna be up there. Doctor Sleep for me absolutely is up there.
I take that over The Shining. That's another controversial take I have.
I totally get it. I got a buddy of mine that's the same way. He's never been a massive fan of the original, and this is more his speed, so I get it. They're both fantastic. Can't go wrong with either one. Hereditary, I feel like will probably be up there. Um, and then I'll stop there. Otherwise, I'm gonna start confusing myself.
Yeah, yeah.
I could have prepared for that question, probably give you a couple more, but off the top of my head, those are some that come to mind.
Well, one of the questions I got, we actually already answered, so, it just in our talking, so don't have to ask that. But the last one I got was, um, what are, like when you think about an emotional gut punch scene in a horror movie that, like, really floored you the first time you saw it or still to this day, like, what are some of the ones that come to mind for you? For me, it's Pet Cemetery. Being
Yeah,
being a
took
dad,
my answer.
yeah, I can't do it, man. I love the movie, but it sucks.
The moment in that movie that does it for me that's been an interesting movie because it's always been one of my favorites. It's always been in the conversation if you would ask me what's the scariest movie, ever since I was a kid. But as an adult, like, the movie has, like, evolved through having kids and just taking on a new life of horror. And the scene in that movie that churns my stomach more than anything, it's none of the gory scenes, it's none of the Zelda stuff. It's the scene where he digs up Gage and you get that POV shot where he opens the grave, and then it's just this still scene where he's holding his corpse in the
Mhm.
cold and there's no music or anything. And just that, I'm just like, oh fuck. Like, as a father, I that movie is the scariest movie of all time to me because
Mhm.
I'll run from Freddy and Michael and Leatherface and all that all day long. You fuck with my kids, and I'm just like, take me, saw me in half,
Yep.
whatever the exchange needs to be. Go ahead. And that movie is just the worst embodiment of that fear.
I've said that to people before, some of my friends that don't have kids and stuff, and I mean it. I'm not being dramatic. If something happened to my kid, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'm clocking out. Like, there's just I wouldn't wanna live in a world, without my child, and I hope that all of us, you, everyone listening, is lucky enough to pass long before their children do,
yeah,
because nobody should have to deal with that. But yeah, you're right because I loved the movie when I was a kid. Zelda scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh, this is great.
Mhm.
I became a dad, and the scene with Gage like really messed me up. And like, it's really hard, especially because my kid's a little blonde kid. So like, I just see my kid in that. But as an adult, I've also realized a scene that never bothered me in my younger years that really gets me now is after he euthanizes him and he's just saying no fair, like a little
Mhm.
kid and such a sweet little like no fair. And as he's falling over and dying, I'm like, just the visual of that. I'm like, I'm not okay with this at all.
Mhm.
So like, it's weird. If you guys don't have kids, there's other things in Pet Cemetery that you find scary. Once you have kids, those won't be as scary anymore. The other shit will. And
Yes.
that's a movie that's just going to stand the test of time. I think. Are you a fan of Pet Cemetery too?
No. To be
Me
fair,
neither.
I've only seen it twice, and I was actually I'm toying with the notion, funny timing, of actually reviewing it this week because I have a dog food sponsor, and I thought that'd be an interesting little way to kind of integrate it. It's the only Pet Cemetery movie I haven't reviewed yet, but no, I've never been a fan of it. To me, it's shocking it's the same director because
Mhm.
it's so campy and goofy and weird. And for years, my dad told me he hated it, and so I just avoided it. And then when I
Yeah.
finally watched it to give it its fair shake, because there's plenty of movies that my dad didn't like that I ended up loving, I was just like, "Oh no, this this ain't it."
Yeah, yeah, no, it was the same situation with my mom. Loved the first one. We watched it from childhood because she loved
Mhm.
it. She's avoid the second one. It's terrible. I was like 23. I bought it. I was like, let me give it a whirl. And I just remember a sex scene with a dog head. And I'm just, yeah, it's just, it wasn't for me. Christian loves it. A lot of my viewers love it. I'm probably going
Oh,
to
it's
get a
got its
comment on this.
fans for sure,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But you should do it. You should do the Pet Cemetery review, tie it in with the dog food sponsor.
Mhm.
And I, I want to see it personally. As somebody that watches your stuff, I want to see it. But
Well, just
I,
for you, it'll happen then for sure.
okay, well,
Once the video is approved, I'll I'll watch the movie and get my thoughts out there finally.
hell yeah. I'm excited to see that play out. And you know what? Look, it can't be worse than Bloodlines, right? Like it can't be.
Yeah, I don't know. They were both when I re-ranked it not too long ago, I can't remember which one that I put last. I think it was Bloodlines because at least Pet Cemetery 2 has interesting ideas that are unique. But yeah, to be honest with you, I don't like any of the Pet Cemetery movies besides the original. I think that the remake dropped the ball heavily. In Bloodlines, I kind of knew what I was walking into, but I saw that at a film festival and I was just like, "Good lord, there's just
I,
there's just
I
no life in this."
I couldn't believe that they made over $100 million with that remake, and they were like, "How we're gonna follow that up? A shitty low budget prequel straight to streaming." And I
Yeah.
was just like, again, some of the business decisions that some of these companies make, I just don't understand it.
It
So
was
yeah.
even more shocking when you saw it at the festival because the director and everybody was in company, so they're doing the Q&A, and sometimes the benefit of the Q&A is you might have some mixed feelings on some creative decisions, and somebody inevitably will ask it, or you can ask it, and they'll give context to it, and sometimes they can win you over. You're like, "Oh, okay. Now it makes more
Mhm.
sense now that I hear the creative describe it." But there was a moment when in this Q&A, the one bit of hope that I held out for with Bloodlines is maybe we're gonna finally get the Wendigo. Maybe they're gonna go there. And spoiler alert, doesn't happen.
Nope.
And somebody asked in the Q&A, they're like, "So why did you decide to retcon the Wendigo?" Because the movie literally just says, "Oh, that's bullshit."
Mhm.
And she goes, "Well, I know that's really gets canon with the book that I love, and everybody's been wanting that, but to me, I thought it'd be more interesting to just recontextualize it like that was just a lie in the town." And I was just sitting there like, how the fuck is that the more interesting version? Just that everybody lied about this monster that's cursed everybody. It's just, shit just happens and everybody lied about that. I was so mad when she said that I'm like, fuck, makes me
Hey,
hate the movie even more.
and it sounds what it really was like was, yeah, well, that would be expensive and that
Yes.
would require some creative like writing and ingenuity. And we just, nah, like, let's just not do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm still holding out hope like 30 plus years later that we're going to get the Wendigo eventually. But honestly, after Bloodlines, maybe Dead is better for a
Yeah.
very, very long time.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, because nothing will ever touch that first movie. But all right, hell yeah. Well, look, Cody, I know you got stuff to do, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk to myself and my audience. And I'm sure by
Mhm.
proxy, some people that watch your channel are gonna see this in their feed and go, "What the fuck? Who's this little guy?" Well, thank you if you're new here. But I want to say again, man, super, super happy for you, for all your success. Been a fan for a long time. And yes, the invitation is always out there
Mhm.
for the podcast again. We're still in the Italian horror because we had to split it up into two parts. So next
Give me a
week is
ring
part
once that's
two.
over.
Yeah. So right now I am watching Argento. I was doing a bunch of Fulci. Now I'm doing Argento and Bava. And once that's over, we do have some stuff planned for this summer that we've kind of thrown around. I'll definitely get back with you on that because I think we need to, after Italian horror, some people might say boring, Cody would say. Some people would say slow burn, however you want to put it. It's not exactly exciting. So,
Yeah,
we need to do some exciting things after
yeah,
this.
little
But
palate cleanser.
yeah, yeah. But no, again, man, I appreciate it. Is there, before we go, is there anything that you have coming up that you want people to be on the lookout for or anything like that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the invite. I appreciate all the kind words. It never gets old hearing that I've been inspired or entertained somebody on any level. So I appreciate it very much. As far as upcoming things this month, we've got Strangers Chapter One coming out on Thursday. They always say Friday. Why don't they just admit it's Thursday from now on? But that review will be out on Friday. I'm curious about that one. I have a top 10 horror movie endings video that was picked by my Patreon members that'll come out probably on Thursday. I'm also beginning to toy with the idea of doing a tier list of horror cliches and tropes. Like, the killer comes back at the end, or,
Mhm.
if you have sex, you die. I think that'd be a fun video to do. And I'm also nearing the end of finally of my John Carpenter review series. So my goal for this month is to get Escape from LA and Vampires out. So those are four that you can look
Hell
forward
yeah.
to for the next couple weeks.
Hell yeah. Well, not like I need to say this because I check my analytics, and when it says channels that your viewers watch the most, Cody Leach is always top three. So all of you guys that are watching me, you already watch Cody anyway. But if you don't, obviously his channel name is his name. Follow him on social media as well. I'll put his links down below. Yeah, I'm actually going to tomorrow. I just decided spur of the moment. I live an hour away from where they filmed Pray at Night, and
Oh, cool.
I've never gone, and I have nothing going on after work tomorrow. So I was like, you know what? I'll bear the rush hour Cincinnati traffic just to go there and do a video on the filming locations because I'm someone that actually prefers Pray at Night to the
I do as
original.
well. I
It's
don't
just
like
it,
the original at all.
it's just more my speed, man.
Mhm,
It's a rock and roll 80s slasher, and like
mhm.
I dig that a lot. I'm kind of ambivalent on this new one. I don't know how to feel. I like Rennie Harlan and I like The
Yeah.
Strangers, but Christian and I were talking about this, man. It's just kind of like the fanfare doesn't really seem to be there. I don't know what I'm walking into.
I feel like it's gonna be a strange rollout of these movies. It feels like they have some cool idea for a 3-movie arc. I love the fact that Rennie Harlan's doing it. To be honest, that's the only reason I'm interested.
Mhm.
But this first movie seems very much like we're going to soft retcon and reboot the original, and I feel like people aren't cool with that because 'cause they're like, "This feels like the original, but cheaper and not as effective." And I have fears that the cool ideas they have are gonna be part 2 and 3, but they're gonna lose
Mhm.
people's interest with the first one, which is just resetting the stage in a familiar way. But we'll find out. The mixed reactions have been weird, the people that have
Yeah.
seen it. There's people that said it was terrible and it was a retread, and there's people that are like, "Absolute gore fest, awesome," and I'm like, "I don't know who to believe." We'll find out on Thursday, I guess.
Sounds like most horror movies that are coming out nowadays. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was great. Oh, it was fucking terrible.
yeah.
So yeah, guess we'll see where we land with that one. Yeah, man, I will say just I don't agree with the idea of I know the marketing is like, find out how they became the strangers or something like that. It's like, no, I'm good. I don't if there's like origin here and stuff, I really don't want or need that at
Yeah, it's kind
all.
of the appeal is not knowing that.
Yeah. And also I'm worried they better not have a bunch of lines of dialogue because the minimalism is best with these characters.
For
So
sure.
we'll see. I trust Rennie Harlan enough to go see it Thursday. I hope I don't regret that decision. But either way, we're in it for the long haul with these 3 movies that we're going to get over probably a calendar year. So fingers crossed for the best. But yeah, guys, again, thank you all so much for watching and tuning in. If you guys are viewers of Cody's channel and you didn't totally hate me, think about subscribing. But again, Cody, It was awesome. And once I have some ideas of what we're doing with the podcast this summer, I'm sure we will have a topic that you will be like, oh, you know what? I'll do that. So I'll reach out to you about that. We'll get you back
Awesome.
on there because they loved having you on too. The people really talked about how, I don't know, the peek
Some
behind
of
the
them didn't.
curtain.
And we're very vocal about it, but that's okay.
Hey, they've done that about every guest we've ever had. Also, they do it about me sometimes. So, it's fine. It's fine. But
Yeah.
again, man, I appreciate it. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to comment down below. Anything Cody said, questions, comments, whatever, fire away down below. We'll join you in the comment section. Appreciate y'all. Cody, it was a blast. Take
Mhm.
care.